In a quiet town on the western coast of Malaysia, nestled between old colonial buildings and towering banyan trees, there stood a modest beauty salon named Velvet Mirror. Owned by a kind, soft-spoken woman named Ayu, the salon had become a sanctuary for women seeking transformation, a haircut before a job interview, makeup before a wedding, a new color for a fresh start. Ayu had inherited the shop from her late aunt, a well-known stylist who had served generations before her. It was a peaceful place, always smelling of lavender oil and jasmine tea. The large mirror that hung on the far wall was antique, its frame carved with ornate floral patterns. Rumor had it that the mirror had once belonged to a noble woman, though no one could trace its origin. Ayu never paid much attention to the stories. She was more concerned with her clients and the joy of helping them feel beautiful. But recently, the peace in Velvet Mirror had begun to fade. It started subtly. The lights would flicker, though the wiring had been recently redone. Cold drafts swept the salon even when the doors were shut. Sometimes, Ayu would find long strands of black hair tangled in the brushes, hair far longer than any client she had seen that day. She chalked it up to stress, to overwork, to coincidence. Then came the whispering. Late at night, as Ayu closed up the salon, she would hear a faint, melodic hum coming from the back room, a lullaby in a language she didn't recognize. She searched everywhere, checked the speakers, her phone, even the pipes, but found nothing. The mirror, always the last thing she cleaned before locking up, began to feel different. As if something watched her from beyond the glass. One evening, as she wiped the mirror's surface, her cloth stopped cold, as if pressed against something solid that wasn't there. Her eyes met her own reflection, but something was off. Her reflection smiled before she did. Ayu stumbled back, blinking. The reflection returned to normal. It must be my imagination, she thought. But a chill crept down her spine that didn't go away. And then, one of her regular clients vanished. The missing client's name was Lena, a vibrant young woman in her 20s who came in every 2 weeks without fail. She always chose the same station by the window, always wore a sunflower hairpin, and always tipped generously. Her sudden absence struck Ayu as odd. At first, she assumed Lena had fallen ill or gone on a trip without notice. But after 3 weeks, and no replies to texts or calls, worry set in. Others noticed, too. Lena's best friend stopped by the salon asking if she'd been seen. She told me she was coming here, the friend said, eyes filled with concern. She sent me a selfie from this mirror. That was the last I heard from her. Ayu checked the appointment book. Sure enough, Lena had booked her usual Tuesday morning slot. Ayu remembered prepping her favorite shampoo and setting the mirror with a fresh towel. But when she thought about it harder, she couldn't recall ever seeing Lena leave. As the days passed, the salon grew quieter. More clients canceled. Those who did come stayed for shorter times, often casting nervous glances toward the big mirror. One woman whispered that she saw something behind her reflection, a face not her own, with long black hair and hollow eyes. Another client said she felt fingers combing her hair, though Ayu wasn't near her at the time. Even Ayu's assistant, Hannah, began to complain of odd things. She claimed she heard someone crying in the storage room. Once, she entered to find all the combs standing upright, perfectly aligned, like soldiers on a battlefield. I think we brought something in, Hannah said one night. That mirror, it's not just old. It's watching us. Ayu dismissed it at first. Rationality was her shield. But deep inside, fear was growing roots. One evening, after a long and uneasy day, Ayu closed the salon alone. As she passed the mirror, she paused, something shimmered faintly in its glass. At first, it looked like a smudge, until it moved. A pale woman in a green kabaya, with impossibly long black hair and a face turned away, stood behind Ayu's reflection. Ayu spun around, no one was there. She turned back to the mirror. Empty. Her breath caught. Her hands trembled. She whispered to herself, it's just the light, just the light. But in her heart, she knew something had changed. After the incident with the mirror, Ayu tried to carry on as if everything were normal. She lit more incense, played calming music, and kept the lights brighter than usual. But something in the air had changed, thickened, as if the salon itself were holding its breath. Clients began arriving less and less. Whispers around town said that the salon felt wrong. A few even claimed that people who looked into the big mirror came away pale and silent, as if something had whispered a secret only they could hear. And then, one rainy afternoon, a new customer walked in. She was elegant, almost regal, with porcelain skin and eyes too dark to reflect light. Her black hair fell down her back in thick, smooth strands, longer than Ayu had ever seen on a real person. She wore a dark green kabaya, embroidered with golden vines that shimmered like dew. "I heard this place comes with history," the woman said, her voice low and melodic. "I need something new. A transformation." Ayu, despite her growing unease, led her to the chair near the mirror. She felt her hands grow cold as she touched the woman's hair, impossibly silky and cold, like water. The woman said nothing during the session, simply watched herself in the mirror, her lips curved in a faint smile. But it wasn't just the woman watching. Ayu could see it, just barely, a shadow in the mirror that moved when neither of them did. Behind the woman, a second reflection stood taller, its face obscured by a curtain of hair. The longer Ayu looked, the more distorted the image became, as if the glass were rippling like a pond. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the room. The overhead light burst, showering sparks. Ayu jumped back, heart racing. When the lights flickered back on, the chair was empty. The woman was gone. No sound. No footsteps. Just an open door that Ayu was certain she had locked minutes before. The only trace left behind was a single strand of long, black hair, and a faint, lingering scent of jasmine, bitter and sweet. Shaken, Ayu checked the security cameras. The footage showed her working alone, talking to empty air, cutting invisible hair, standing before a mirror that reflected no one. That night, Ayu didn't sleep. And neither did the salon. The next morning, Ayu returned to the salon with heavy steps. She hadn't told anyone about what she saw, or didn't see, the day before. The security footage haunted her, more than the mirror ever had. It wasn't just strange, it was impossible. The woman had been there. She had touched her hair, spoken to her. But the camera saw nothing. Desperate for answers, Ayu visited the oldest person she knew, Mak Ja, a traditional healer who lived on the outskirts of town. Mak Ja had been her aunt's friend and often spoke of spirits and energies most people refused to believe in. She welcomed Ayu with a long look and a single question. "You've been touching the mirror, haven't you?" Ayu froze. Mak Ja poured tea made from pandan and lemongrass, and motioned for her to sit. "That mirror was never meant to be brought into a place of beauty," she said. "It's a gate. A reflection of sorrow. Your aunt sealed it, long ago. But when she passed, the seal must have weakened." Ayu told her about the woman, the whispering, the black hair, and the empty recordings. Mak Ja listened silently, then said one word that made Ayu's blood run cold: Langsuir. A Langsuir, she explained, was no ordinary ghost. It was the spirit of a woman who died during childbirth, her grief so powerful that it warped her soul into something vengeful. Long hair, green kabaya, the scent of jasmine, these were her signs. She didn't just haunt. She consumed. "The Langsuir steals beauty, youth, and vitality," Mak Ja whispered. "She mirrors your image, then drains your essence until all that's left is a reflection trapped in the glass." Ayu's hands trembled. The clients, the woman, the mirror. She remembered something her aunt used to say while cleaning the glass: always look with respect. Never stare too long. Mak Ja gave Ayu a small vial of oil and a string of black beads. "If she has crossed through, the mirror must be closed. Or she'll take more." Ayu left with her heart pounding and the weight of generations pressing on her shoulders. That night, back at the salon, she stood before the mirror alone. She could feel it watching her. Waiting. And behind her, something stirred. Ayu stood in front of the mirror, her reflection dim in the low light of the salon. She had turned off the overhead bulbs, relying only on the flickering glow of a single candle, just as Macja had instructed. The vial of protective oil hung around her neck, warm against her chest. The string of black beads, blessed with prayers, wrapped tightly around her wrist. The silence in the room was suffocating. She took a breath and began to recite the old chant Macja had taught her, her voice trembling at first, then gaining strength. The mirror remained still, but the air around it thickened, almost humming. It was as though the salon was holding its breath, listening. Then, the temperature dropped. Frost crept across the glass surface. The candle sputtered. And there she was. The woman in green appeared once more, inside the mirror, not in the room, her back turned, hair cascading like a dark waterfall. Slowly, she turned around, revealing her face at last. It was wrong. Beautiful and horrifying at once, her eyes were empty, her mouth stretched in a smile that never moved. "You called me," the Langsuir said, her voice echoing through the room like a forgotten lullaby. "I want you to leave," Ayu replied, her voice breaking. "This is not your place." The Langsuir tilted her head. "It is now. I was invited. You're hurting people. I was hurt first." Suddenly, the mirror pulsed, a flash of light, and Ayu was no longer in the salon. She was inside the mirror. She stood in a warped version of her shop, colors faded and sound muffled. The Langsuir stood in the center, surrounded by the ghostly reflections of the missing women. They reached out to Ayu, eyes pleading, trapped behind invisible glass walls. "You keep your beauty while we fade," the Langsuir whispered. "You forget us. You move on." "No," Ayu said, taking a step forward, heart racing. "You are not forgotten. But this is not justice. This is torment." She raised the vial and flung the oil onto the mirror's surface. The beads on her wrist began to glow faintly. The Langsuir screamed, not in pain, but in grief. A sound so ancient, so raw, it shook the mirrored world around them. Cracks spread through the false salon like lightning. Ayu reached for the real mirror. With all her strength, she called out the chant again. The mirror shattered. A blast of wind knocked her to the floor. When she opened her eyes, she was back in the real salon, surrounded by shards of broken glass. The candle had burned out. The mirror was gone. And so was the Langsuir. Or so she thought. The next morning, the townspeople found Ayu sitting outside her salon, wrapped in a shawl, barefoot and silent. Her hands were cut and bruised, and bits of glass clung to her clothes, but her eyes were clear. The police came. So did the neighbors. She told them a simple version, that she slipped, that the mirror shattered, that stress had finally caught up with her. She smiled weakly and nodded as they told her to rest, to take time off, to grieve. But she knew what had really happened. She boarded up the salon. She burned the strands of hair she found in the corners. And she placed the black beads in a jar of salt and sealed it tight, burying it beneath the roots of the banyan tree outside, the way Macja had instructed. For weeks, Ayu stayed away from mirrors. Any reflection made her uneasy, puddles, windows, polished metal. Even her phone's front camera sent a chill through her spine. But slowly, the quiet returned. New clients began asking when Velvet Mirror would reopen. The whispering stopped. The strange chills faded. Life, it seemed, was returning to normal. Still, Ayu knew some mirrors never truly forget. One evening, as she closed the windows at home, her phone buzzed. A photo had been sent from an unknown number. No message. No context. The image showed the salon's interior, untouched, exactly as it had been before the mirror broke. But in the photo, standing just behind the empty styling chair, was a woman in green, her hair hanging low, her smile frozen in glass. And in the reflection of the window, Ayu saw herself. Staring back. But she wasn't smiling.